Welcome back. My name is Matt Reiners, and I'm the co-founder of Eversound, a company dedicated to improving quality of life for older adults by giving them the gift of hearing. Today, I'm joined by Liam Goddard, the Director of Wellness for a Life Plan community. I recently connected with Liam and was loving the articles he has recently written. He's an up-and-comer in senior living, and we'll say in our first call, he was the most prepared person that I've come across, which is a good thing. But thanks for joining me today, Liam.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So it's really good to be here. I appreciate your time and allowing me to be a part of your podcast.
Amazing. So, Liam, can you share a little bit of your background and how you got into senior living?
Absolutely. So I think probably similar to a lot of people's stories. I'm not sure I went through college or went into college ever thinking this was the industry that I was going to spend my career in. I actually started out with a bachelor's degree in exercise science. I thought I wanted to work with major sports teams or, go be a strength coach at a college or something along those lines. But I happened in that program, I did an internship at a life plan community near the college that I went to, and had a great experience. I really connected with the people I was working with, the people I was working for, recognized that this is just a fantastic industry to be a part of. And there's a lot of meaningful work to be done in this industry. So that's where I started. I ended up getting a job out of college with that bachelor's degree in exercise science, working in the fitness center as a personal trainer, as an exercise specialist, working in that life plan community. From there, I ended up moving into an assistant director of wellness position, and then ultimately my current role, which is the director of wellness. I've worked at two different life plan communities, one in Florida and one here in North Carolina. But that's kind of the path I took on my way from that bachelor's degree of exercise science. I wanted to continue down that path of human movement. Got a master's degree in kinesiology, and then decided that I really wanted to get into the business side of life plan communities or senior living, and ended up getting my master's degree in business administration. So both of those things have really kind of opened some doors for me and led me into the position that I am today.
That's awesome. And I love the dedication to education and really continuing to do that. And yeah, you've got such a unique background for this, and it's just amazing to hear. And yeah, I think a lot of the listeners, right, kind of just walked into senior living without really knowing what it was. But hey, we're glad you stuck around. Um, and now being the director of wellness today, and you had mentioned, your other job being the assistant director of wellness before then. I think at least my experience has been the word wellness is ambiguous in this industry, especially as people kind of focus it from community to community. Can you share a little bit of what you're responsible for and how that shifted over the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, that's honestly a great question. I would say the word wellness is not just ambiguous in this industry; it's just an ambiguous word.
Yeah.
Most people think of wellness, and you could go 100 different directions as to what that actually means. And I think that is really highlighted in the senior living industry. If you were to do a search of a director of wellness and what that means in senior living, it is across the gamut of what people consider that job title to be. I've seen it listed as someone who is a registered nurse and oversees the clinical aspects. I've seen it as purely just fitness, and I've seen it as something that's really resident experience and kind of focusing across the dimensions of wellness. So I think as we talk about how this has shifted over the last 5 years, um, I think originally wellness was really geared towards that physical fitness aspect of wellness, personal training, group fitness classes, these sorts of things that were the traditional idea of wellness. Um, the way that that's changed for me, certainly in my career, is that's expanding to multiple dimensions. So we're branching away from just physical wellness, and we're also including spiritual wellness and spiritual care. We're including things like the spa and salon, including things like transportation, a lot of these resident facing areas that can all be considered wellness. So currently in my job, what I do right now is I oversee five different departments, one being the fitness center, one being life enrichment, or what a lot of people consider to be activities. And I oversee these at all levels of care. So it's independent living, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. I also oversee transportation. So we do medical transportation for all of our residents. I oversee spiritual care. So the spiritual care would be our religious services, non-denominational, making sure that everyone is getting both their religious spiritual care fulfilled and also those that are not religious, making sure that they have access to spiritual care as they see fit. And then the spa and salon. So overseeing, that kind of getting their manicures and pedicures, their hair done, massages, kind of all of those um, real emotional wellness aspects that you would normally get out in the community, being able to get that right here on campus. And then I think an area of this that is really expanding and that wellness is starting to play a bigger role in is the technology piece. So we use a campus-wide community engagement platform. So we use this platform for communicating to all of our residents, pushing out messages, pushing out alerts. We do our calendar of events through this platform. They can register for different events. That could be anything from an outing to a group fitness class to a presentation that's coming on campus. Any parties that we're having, all those sorts of things goes through there. They can do their service requests. If they need to request maintenance or housekeeping, or if they need requests for IT, that can all be done through this platform. So I see technology as being this emerging concept that's being more widely used within senior living communities. And because it really impacts the resident experience, for me, that's falling under wellness. And that's something that I've been overseeing here as well. So I guess to get back to your original question of, what is wellness? What does it mean in senior living? Right now, I don't think there is a definition. I think depending on the community you're in, they define wellness the way that they see fit. But I would say the trajectory of wellness moving forward is really focusing on the individual resident and their experience throughout all levels of care where they're living.
Yeah. Wow. That's you oversee a lot, Liam. You're a rock star. And it's just, yeah, I think you bring up some really good points. And my experience to the word wellness has been the same, that they can pretty much do it's all about the definition that the communities have for that. But it's awesome to hear what you guys are doing and really embracing technology. And I love the thought of, the future of wellness, right, is incorporating more of that technology. And I think it's so true. And, I think one of the things where I've seen you written on, and I would love to take this next question is, a major pain point within the senior living industry is employee retention. I talked to someone the other day where they're saying that was one of their main KPIs now. And I know you recently wrote an article about this. And, I'm curious, like, how are you and your team improving the employee experience?
It's a great question. So I think, as I mentioned in that first question, most people are not leaving their education, their school, their college. They're not leaving necessarily looking to enter the senior living community or the workforce. So, one, attracting them to work here in the first place is already an uphill battle. Secondly, once they are here, what are we doing to keep them? And, it's the facts are is that, senior living is not a glamorous job. It's not something that people typically think of as this kind of rock star lifestyle. So when you get here, you find very quickly that there's a lot of meaningful work that can be done. And I think that that's one of the things that really needs to be highlighted in order to retain, employees in this industry. So when we think about turnover rates, that's a huge metric that people are looking at. And depending on the departments of senior living that you're in, they can be higher or lower. But typically across the board, turnover rates for senior living communities are upwards of 50%. I mean, it is a huge turnover rate, which is leaps and bounds over what you see across all industries across the United States. So there's already a big problem with retaining our employees. And when we look at something like nursing staff, this is probably one that everyone can relate to. So it doesn't matter what structure your senior care facility is. It could be skilled nursing, it could be just memory care, it could be a life plan community that encompasses everything. The common thread amongst all of these facilities is that if you don't have nurses, you're not going to function. They're truly integral to the operations of senior living. And we've seen throughout the pandemic, coming even post pandemic, that nurses, they're they're leaving in droves because these giant health organizations are offering crazy amounts of money. And, senior living communities are just having a really hard time compensating for that. So a lot of communities have already increased wages significantly just to try to keep them in the door. But even that is not always enough. So we have to go above and beyond and look at what is truly meaningful to a lot of this workforce. So again, just thinking about nurses for a moment, because I think everyone can relate to that. We have to look at work-life balance. We have to look at inclusion, diversity, equity. We have to look at making sure what we are doing is fitting the schedule that they need. So that's often not done, especially in the nursing world, where I know most bedside nurses are working 12-hour shifts. It's really hard to do if you have a family, children to take care of. So I think companies, especially in senior living, really need to take a look at, what are your shifts? Can you adjust your shift schedules to make a better work-life balance, but yet still meet the needs and the regulations of your community? Are you offering diversity, equity, inclusion training? Are you making sure that across the board where you work, people are in tune with what's really important to these employees? Similarly, with all staff. I know frontline staff across the board. When you're looking at EVS, when you're looking at dining, culinary, it is becoming increasingly hard to attract and retain quality employees. So right now, it's an uphill battle. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think what we really need to do is focus on the fact that we are doing quality, meaningful work in these communities and how we can portray that to our employees to really make them feel like they're making a difference.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And I think one of the thing I continue to see is right is that the meaningfulness of the work, and feeling good at the end of the day and really doing that. And I think, continuing to bring that front and center, and really emphasizing that, hopefully we'll see some of those turnover rates starting to decrease. Cause yeah, like 50%, I know we've all probably seen the studies of how much it costs to hire someone new versus the retention side of things. And, it's definitely an uphill battle, as you had mentioned, especially within the industries what we're all facing today. And I know retention is important, of course, but also think on the other side of the coin is the recruitment is important too. And in addition to all of your other responsibilities, I noticed you help facilitate an internship program at your community. What have you learned when trying to inform students into the senior living industry?
Yeah. I would first say that if there's anybody out there that's working for a senior living community and you did not have an internship program, that's something you should start working on tomorrow. That is truly one of the best pipelines you can put into place for getting quality talent into your community. I know myself, I went through an internship that opened my eyes to this industry. A lot of my colleagues have done very similar. So when we get students in here, I see it two ways. A lot of times people are coming in here to do their internship for an undergrad as kind of a stepping stone to higher education, or they're coming in to do an internship because they got placed there and then it wasn't necessarily their choice, but they had to do it and now they're here. So it's a great way to get people in the door in this industry. But once they're here, you have to really work at showing them why they should stay. And I think that goes twofold. One, very quickly, students, when they come in, realize that there is meaningful work. And I know I've said that a few times, but it's true. You come in, you're actually making a difference in people's lives on a daily basis, really in all positions in the senior living industry. Second, I think it's really important to have growth opportunities available for new grads that are coming through the system. They're coming through your internship program. You want to be able to highlight some key opportunities that they might be able to take advantage of if they do decide to come work for you, or if you have an opening for them to come work. So that might be, help with getting higher education. Do you have a scholarship fund? Are there opportunities for growth? So one of the things that I like to highlight to any new students coming in, especially if they weren't necessarily, this wasn't necessarily their choice to come here, but they ended up here, is try to show them that this industry has a really high level job security. What I mean by that is we have this aging population, 65 and older, most of them of which are the baby boomers. And they currently make up around 65 million adults in the United States. So there's a huge number of baby boomers that are currently getting to the age where they are looking to move into a facility like this, into senior living. On top of that, the baby boomers control around 80% of disposable income. So they've got money, and most of them have the resources now to actually consider moving into a place like this. And as the years go on, closer to about 10 years from now, maybe around 2030, that number of seniors looking to enter into senior living communities is going to skyrocket. So I like to highlight that a lot for students coming in because it really shows that while there are jobs now and we are trying to hire now, as more and more demand comes from these people that are aging out of the workforce and looking for senior living, it's only going to create opportunity for growth, meaning that there's going to need to be more and more management, more and more executive level positions, more and more facilities opening up. And it really opens their eyes to this could be a really viable career path for me moving forward. So I think that's a really important point, not to just get the interns in if you don't already have them, but really show them, the quality of this industry and the growth of this industry as far as, a career path goes.
Yeah, no, I think it's it's smart to share that, right? I think sometimes, when startups like me, we see those numbers get really excited, but the idea of like it's not just a job, it's a career and there's opportunities to grow and it is a growing industry and you can, what I love about it too is, let's say you get your business degree, right? Like you've got your MBA, like you could really do any aspect of business within it too. And I see that continuing from when I talk to college students is like they just don't know like, oh, I can go do marketing in senior living. And it's just like pretty wild to when you kind of help to connect those dots and talk about the bigger opportunity there. So yeah, I love that and how you guys are taking that education piece for them and really showcasing and the future and those future opportunities. And, my final question here for you, Liam, my favorite, if you were to give other providers just three guiding principles as we move through 2023, what would you say?
That's a good question. So the first thing I would give, and it's very specific to 2023, we have a high level of inflation. Everything is costing more. People are kind of tightening the reins, and I would say to do a nice inward look to see if you can do more with less. I think for a long time we've been operating in this mindset of we need more, we need the latest and greatest, we need improved technology, to make sure that we're offering the best experience to our residents. And I think what we're finding moving into 2023 and our budget season this year is that we have a lot of resources around us. And it's important to take a step back, figure out what is really important to the residents, and see how you can utilize the resources that you already have. But I think that's very specific to 2023. One of the other things that I think is really important in this industry, and I think it's specific to retention, it's specific to um, attracting employees, is a lot of what we already talked about, which is getting those internships and getting the incoming workforce excited about this industry. It's a booming industry. There's a lot of growth happening, especially over the next decade or so, and just getting that workforce excited, putting programs into place to make a clear path for growth for them, make sure that they know that they have a future here, and that's going to be integral in making sure that this industry is successful moving forward. And finally, probably the most important part of this industry is just knowing that we're making a difference. Just knowing that these people, these individuals that are moving into our communities, no matter what the structure is, if it's independent living or if it's just skilled nursing or if it's everything in between, they are coming here because they need the help that we provide to improve their life. And they're coming here to live out their final years. And that's a really special, meaningful choice that they are making. And it's really our responsibility to ensure that we give them the best possible care. And knowing that in doing that, we're really making a difference in people's lives on a daily basis here. And I think that's incredibly important to remind ourselves. Um, and having that attitude in all employees is only going to improve the quality of service that we provide.
I love it. Liam, knowing people like you are in this industry and the future is in your hands just gives me so much excitement for where we can go as an overall industry. So, thank you so much for joining. I know our listeners will get a lot out of this and just appreciate everything you bring every single day.
Absolutely, Matt. Thanks for having me. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.